Hello everybody, Maven here, and remember a year ago when they introduced the Loreley Splendor Helm into the classy restoration meta of all things, and it was the most broken thing in the game? It was literal god mode. Well, it is back to its original glory now because of the introduction of things like Firesprites, Ember of Mercy, the new mod system, all of this stuff that we're going to break down in today's video. I counted a total of 7 buffs and 1 nerf. Could be more, could be less, so let's talk about it. Okay, so I feel like I don't have to explain how the Loreley Splendor Helm functions because at this point everybody knows, but just in case there's a new player clicking on this video, it's when you are critically wounded, so when your shields break and your health becomes red, it'll spawn a sunspot, consuming your barricade charge, and it will grant you restoration. Restoration that you could extend with the Ember of Empyrean Fragment. So that's how you're able to be immortal with the Loreley Splendor Helm. That's how everybody knows it to be. It's just infinite restoration. And since it relies on your barricade charge, that's why we have the quicker charging rally barricade over the towering barricade. So now with that introduction out of the way, let's talk about some of the ways that this build got buffed this season. Now, the first buffs I want to talk about are artifact mods. There are 3 artifact mods that synergize very well with this build. And these are season specific, obviously, so they're here for a few more months, but once season 21 launches, these mods will be gone. However, the build will still be very strong. These are kind of just icing on the cake that really put this build over the limit. So the first mod I want to talk about is Solar Surge. Collecting a Firesprite grants you armor charge, and we do have a very extensive armor charge setup with this build we'll talk about later. But for those who don't know what a Firesprite is, it is the new mechanic added to Solar 3.0, and when you pick up a Firesprite, it grants you grenade energy. So there are 2 ways that we're going to generate Firesprites with this build. One of them is Ember of Searing, so defeating scorched targets grants a melee energy, so it's good if you lose your baby hammer and you have a way to charge it back by just defeating scorched targets. But defeating scorched targets also grants a Firesprite. Now the way that we are going to scorch targets is via our Firebolt grenade, more on that in a second, but it scorches targets. And then Soul Invictus can create sunspots on Solar ability Final Blows, and sunspots, if an enemy touches them, they get scorched. But the reason that we are running Firebolt grenades is because there are a couple more artifact mods that we're going to talk about here that really power up the Firebolt grenades this season. Firebolt grenades apply more scorch stacks. Damaging a combatant with the Firebolt grenade spawns a Firesprite near them. That is amazing because you do not even have to kill the enemy with the Firesprite. All you have to do is damage them with it, any Firesprite will spawn. And then on top of that, there is Rain of Firebolts, so you get granted a second Firebolt grenade charge. That's pretty ridiculous. And more about Flare Up, Firebolts deal additional Scorch. And on top of that, our Ember of Ashes grants additional Scorch stacks. So doing a test here against Charles, as you can see, 1 Firebolt will cause a solar ignition, making Firebolts incredibly powerful. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, and I didn't test this, but I think that if you throw a Firebolt grenade and it hits 2 targets, that it will split the Scorch stacks between them. So I think that if you hit multiple targets, you're going to have to throw 2 Firebolts. I think that's the way it works, but don't quote me on that. But I'll just let the clip against Charles play out here. So basically what I do is I tractor cannon followed by the baby throwing hammer into a Firebolt. And then I just baby hammer, Firebolt, because I got 2 charges, and then I just continue that pattern over and over again. And this is a very tanky enemy over light on Neomuna. You know how strong enemies on Neomuna are, and this build doesn't even care. I can just stand in the face of danger getting stomped by Charles all day long. It does not matter because a Loreley Titan is not about to die. You can even see at a point I get to critical red health. I'm on like 2 HP, but I just get that sunspot and I heal back up because Loreley is balanced. And you may also notice that I'm getting my Firebolt grenade charges back very quick, not only because Firebolt grenades have the quickest cooldown of any grenade in the entire game, but also the Flare Up artifact mod says that damaging a target with a Firebolt spawns a Firesprite. So it's just going to make that point blank while we're hammering him. We pick it up immediately, we get armor charges, and also the Firesprite is going to grant us grenade energy. Now here's where we have to talk about a mod on our boot. Stacks on Stacks. Picking up an Orb of Power grants you 1 additional stack of armor charge, and I believe this is bugged with the artifact mod we talked about a second ago, Solar Surge. So remember that when we're doing our little combo against Charles there, when we throw that Firebolt grenade, because of Flare Up, it's going to make that Firesprite point blank on his body, so we pick it up immediately, and that's going to proc Solar Surge. But I'll show you this next clip here. So when we pick up that Firesprite, it's actually going to give us 3 stacks of armor charge for whatever reason. I believe this is a bug and it's very powerful. And the reason that's insane while doing our little hammer nade combo against Charles is because we have a mod on our gloves called Grenade Kickstart, which also got buffed this season. It got reworked. When your grenade energy is fully expended, you gain grenade energy back, but additionally, your armor charge stacks are consumed, granting you additional grenade energy for each stack. And because of the fact that the Firesprite is going to be generated point blank while you're doing your hammer nade combo, you're gonna have 3 stacks of armor charge by default at all times. So you're gonna get a lot of grenade energy back every time you throw a nade. But we also have another mod on our gloves called Impact Induction, so causing a damage with our melee attack is going to reduce our grenade cooldown. So while we're hammering Charles in the face, it's also giving us grenade energy in addition to the Firesprite, in addition to the Grenade Kickstart. So that is how we're able to spam Firebolt grenades pretty much as we can spam hammers. It's crazy. But as you expected, it still doesn't stop there because we have another reworked buffed mod here on our gloves called Heavy Handed. Your powered melee final blows generate orbs of power, and since we're getting so many kills with our baby throwing hammer, that is going to make an orb for every single enemy we kill. So not only is this a very heavy intellect build because of double hands-on on our helmet, but it's also going to generate a lot of orbs of power for your teammates as well and get your Hammer of Soul ability back very quickly. And the reason that it's so significant that every enemy that we hammer to death is going to make an orb is because not only is it giving us that stacks on stacks armor charge energy to get Grenade Kickstart going, but also it procs innervation and insulation on our boots. So for every hammer kill we're getting, we're also reducing our grenade cooldown and our class ability cooldown, so we can have that Loreley protection up more often, we can have our firebolt grenades more often. And then for the rest of our mods, I had a little bit of extra energy on my helmet, so I put on Ashes to Assets for more super energy on grenade kills, but you can run whatever you want. You can run Void Reserves if you want for your tractor cannon. And then on my class, I might have Triple Bomber. This spot is really up to you. It doesn't matter what you run. Triple Bomber just gets you some grenade energy back when you put down your barricade, but we really don't use our barricade that often, but it's just on the off chance that I happen to, I can get more Firebolt energy. And then as you expected, triple charged up on our chest piece, so we can carry up to 6 stacks of armor charge. And I briefly mentioned this earlier, but this is how we're able to stay immortal, is by the brand new added Ember of Mercy, another buff to Loreley Titan. When you pick up a Firesprite, you get restoration, and you extend that restoration forever via Ember of Empyrean. So when you get a solar weapon or ability final blow, you extend your restoration. Now here is the one nerf of this build. The resilience stat in general got nerfed. You would normally have a 40% damage reduction in PvE, but now it's down to 30%. So you're a little less tanky, but it doesn't matter. You're still immortal. And with this build, I'd also aim for 100 discipline and then go in with as much intellect as you can, because with double hands-on and all the orbs you're making from heavy-handed, this is also a super build. You can get your super very easily. Now, time to address the elephant in the room. You're probably looking at my weapon choices. I'm running 2 grenade launchers and a tractor cannon. Now, the tractor cannon is self-explanatory because you're using your hammer and your nades for almost all of your ad clear, and if you run into a fatter enemy, the tractor cannon debuff plus the baby hammers and solar ignitions is very strong for taking down fatter enemies. But what the heck is going on here with our double grenade launchers? Well, they both have auto-loading holster, demolitionist with blinding grenades. I mean, they were renamed to disorienting grenades, but you get it. They both have the same role, and this is very important. So I'll make a little montage in 3, 2, 1, go about reasons why blinding grenades are pretty solid with this build. Is because you're going in for those hammer kills. You want to get up point blank to the enemies and just hammer their faces, but sometimes there's phalanxes who have shields blocking your hammers. There's sometimes enemies that are nimble and move around a lot that if you blind them, they'll just be immobilized and you can just go hammer their face. There's sometimes beefier targets like gladiators that will slice your face up if you try to get close to them, and they're very tanky. But if they're sitting there doing nothing, you can just hammer their body all day. And even wyverns are capable of being blinded. Normally, if you get close to them, they have their little 4-round slug shotgun burst that'll just annihilate you no matter what resilience you have. But if you blind them, they can't do anything back, and you can just sit in the face of all the enemies just hammering away. And it's even good against other Vex, like just basic goblins, and it's good against Taken and good against Scorn and Fallen, because they like to teleport around the battlefield. You just want them to stop. Just stop so you can get up in their face and hammer them. And then also, if you're approaching a group of ads, like you see a big group of ads, but they're like 40 meters out, if you just lob a blinding grenade and get them to all stop, you'll have that time to get up to them. Now, the reason for running 2 auto-loading blinding grenade launchers is because you would never have to reload them. You can just swap back and forth between them. Shoot one, swap to the other, shoot that one, the other one will auto-load, and you can just swap back and forth, never having to reload. But then the reason that they both have Demolitionist is because you can do some good burst damage with your firebolt grenades. I'll show a little example right here. You can go Tractor, and then you can shoot your grenade launcher, throw that firebolt grenade to proc Demolitionist, swap to the other one, do the same thing, swap back to the other one, and you can just keep on repeating this for some good burst damage. And another beauty of blinding grenades with this build is that blinding grenades, they really do not do a lot of self-damage. So you can point blank an enemy with blinding grenades and it won't really do much to you. So I would highly recommend this setup if you can do that. If you don't have them with Demolitionist, it's fine if you just go with 2 auto-loading blinding grenade launchers, that'll do the job. But there is actually one more weapon that I don't personally have that I'll be grinding for this season that is so perfect for this build that would eradicate the need for the other GL in your energy slot, and you can only run 1 GL in the kinetic slot. And that is the Militia's Birthright. The Militia's Birthright can roll with auto-loading holster in the second column and Grave Robber in the first column. Now, Grave Robber is a very unique perk to GLs. What it does is when you get a melee final blow, it will reload your weapon. So you can run around just holding out your Militia's Birthright, and when you get those baby hammer, throwing hammer kills, it'll just reload your GL. So you don't have to swap between 2 GLs, you can just have the one. The Militia's Birthright can just do the job if it has Grave Robber. But the one downside of the Militia's Birthright is that you do not have Demolitionist. So you cannot do that combo where you auto-load your grenade launcher by throwing a grenade for that heavy burst damage. So that's where it suffers, but I feel like it's better for just running around ad clearing. So it's up to you which one you prefer, but I do very greatly enjoy the auto-loading Demolitionist double GL setup. I'm having a lot of fun with this and I think it's very strong. But some people may be curious, Maven, what happens when you lose your baby hammer? What happens if you throw it off a cliff? It's gonna take forever to recharge because you're running literally no strength. So what are you gonna do? Well, Ember of Searing is so powerful with that secondary effect of granting melee energy when you defeat scorched targets. I'll show you another clip right here. I'm gonna toss away my baby hammer and I'm gonna run through this lost sector as normal and see what happens. With double GL, I can still ad clear very well, blind things, spam solar grenades, scorch those targets. Ember of Searing is going to refund my melee energy, and just like that, it's going to recharge my hammer very quickly, even though I have no investment into strength. And just for good measure, I'm going to do the same thing in the next room. I'm going to throw away my baby hammer and start ad clearing with my double GLs, and because of Demolitionist, I can auto-load them. It's very great still without the baby hammer. And before you know it, because of all the scorching we're doing, Ember of Searing quickly gives me back my hammer. So even if you lose your hammer, it's not a big deal. But another reason why this build is going to be very good later in the season for Grandmaster Nightfalls is because if you turn your attention to the left side of the screen here, ignitions now say that they stun unstoppable champions. And remember, one single firebolt grenade will cause a solar ignition. And on top of that, if you need barrier champion coverage, you can just throw an Ember of Torches because your powered melee hits will make you radiant, and while you are radiant, your weapons have anti-barrier rounds no matter what you're using. So all you really have to do is cover for overload, which you can just run overload SMG. And your Radiant SMG can deal with 2 different champions. There you go. You can cover all 3 champions very easily. And on to the wrap up for the Loreley Splendor build. Now, I've been messing around with Strand quite a bit this season, and I enjoy it. I really do. I think it's very strong to be able to suspend everything, but still nothing has come close to the power of the Loreley Splendor build. I use this to solo the Legend campaign. I mean, to be fair, I had a teammate for the last 2 missions, but for the most part, I was able to, no problem, solo the Legend campaign with this. And it's just insane how nothing can kill you, and you can just be up in the face of enemies, annihilating them with the throwing hammers. Because as soon as I use something else, it's like I feel incredibly weak. I feel powerless. Like I can't do the damage, I can't survive. But as soon as you whip on the Loreley, it just makes the game too easy. So as always, I will leave a dim link down below in the description and the pinned comment to this build if you would like to give it a try. And if you have any ideas on something that could improve upon this build, let me know in the comments. I'd like to give it a try as well. So that's gonna do it for the video, guys. Go out there and have some fun with this cheat code of a build. And I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to hit the like button and drop a comment, because interacting with the video in those kinds of ways really helps it out, helps the algorithm. And if you're new here, consider subscribing. Would love to have you here. And with that, I'll catch you in the next video. Later.